Yeah, I was kind of on this big learning curve about, what's blab? And what I'm trying to do is just post a tweet so people can follow it if they see the tweet. And yeah, we just met there. So it's a very, very new social media platform, which I'm very excited about because of the potential for it. And then I was sharing a bit about what I'm interested in about recovery. And you kindly offered to interview me, which I was a bit scared about, if I'm honest, but excited as well. I had mixed feelings, and I thought, let's be brave and have a go, because I think there's a lot of potential. And, it kind of goes wrong. My audio went wrong the other day, and I just started on a phone, and it's a bit like, it reminds me of like the Wild West kind of thing, like starting something new, technology, and you kind of learn. There's a good community on Blab where people do help each other out and kind of tolerate it being a little bit wonky, not always working.
Have you told your story publicly before?
Sometimes, yeah. I was asked to write an article for something called the Systemic Family Therapy magazine, AFT, in England, and I kind of told it there. And I'm really kind of positive about recovery in lots of different ways, from both mental health and addiction. And so I think there's something about role modeling, not that, there's lots of different ways to get better, but there's something about, for me, seeing people help me to get better, seeing people get better. So there's something about hearing that it's possible to go on a journey of recovery out of very difficult times and getting better. It does give hope to other people. And I suppose that's what motivates me to be willing to kind of hold on to my anxiety in my stomach and just be brave and share a bit, really.
Well, I'll be gentle on you. Before we go any further here, I just want to let people know the structure here. I was thinking of interviewing Ray for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. We'll see how it goes. And then if others want to come on, Ray can open up the seats and you can comment, ask Ray questions, or share your own story if you choose to. And that's kind of how it's going to be here. So I have some questions I'm going to ask Ray. And Ray, you can answer them in whatever way you want. I appreciate you doing this, and for everybody hanging in here while we sorted out our tech problems here today. So maybe I'll just start and just say a tiny bit about myself, and then you can get into talking about yourself. I am a former psychotherapist myself, and for the last 16 years, I've been helping therapists and natural health businesses online build their businesses. So that's kind of who I am. And thanks for the props there. And so without further ado, I'm going to get on to give it over to Ray here, and ask him some questions. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself first and kind of your background, Ray?
Yeah, and just before I do, some people are very brand new, first time watching a blab. So I might just briefly explain before I introduce myself is you've got a few options. So if you're on a phone or if you're got a mouse, if you like what someone's saying, you can kind of click on the screen and then these little what are called props come up. You don't have to do that. It's just a bit of way of interacting. And the other way for people who are brand new to Blab is you can post, when it says type something cool at the bottom, you can post comments. Now, sometimes and then there's a bit of jargon and vocabulary about the whole thing. It's like a new genre, like science fiction, or like that. We're trying to work out how do you do blabs, and so the things you can do to interact is type comments. It'll be recorded because I've remembered to press record, and you can type comments and things like that. So anyway, I'm just explaining a little bit how Blab works. So who am I? I'm Ray Middleton. I live in the northeast coast of England in a nice coastal village. I'm married to a lovely woman who I love. I've got 2 grown-up adult children who I'm very proud of. One, my son's a nurse and my daughter's a chef. I've got 2 Basset Hound dogs, and I work in Newcastle and Gateshead with people, a non-profit service for people with multiple complex needs called Fulfilling Lives.
Excellent.
And a couple of random facts is I'm no good at DIY at all, as well, just to tell you something else about myself.
No good at DIY. So tell us about how long you've been in recovery, Ray.
Okay. So the short answer would be 16 years. If I reflect a little bit more, that was the last time I got clean and sober from drugs. I did get sober in about 1989, 1990. about 19 years old, and I stayed sober for 5 years then, and then I relapsed for about another 4 years. So 16 years, and then before that there was a 5-year patch.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And what do you what was your major motivator for getting sober, staying sober? What was the impetus for that?
So the motivation for getting clean and sober, the quick answer would be pain. Pain. The pain of living living with addiction, active addiction. If I reflected a little bit more on that question, what motivated me, I think it was probably a combination of the pain of my life, which was a mixture of guilt, shame, anger, resentment, fear, a big ball of emotion, which I didn't particularly be able to name as well as that at the time, combined with my painkillers not working. So the repetitive excess of doing things which we sometimes call addiction was my painkiller, and after a few years it was no longer killing the pain. And I think we don't give things up in a vacuum. So the last thing I'd say on that point is there was also, in a context where there was some hope, I saw some people who were in recovery. So the painkillers weren't working, I was in a lot of pain, and I could see some alternative way of getting better, changing. And
so then what happened?
So let me think. In terms of like my journey of recovery, you're thinking. So the last time I got sober, it's about 16 years ago. I'll try and keep this brief. I suppose a journey. I think we're all living narrative kind of lives or stories. So the challenge is to kind of edit things and not be too wordy, I think. So I'll try to give you a quick edited version of what happened and how I got better. So I think I went to like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and I got into that kind of mutual aid recovery, which I think was very helpful for me. And I'd done 5 years sober before. So I suppose if I was going to describe it as a journey, what I'd say is, I grew up in a stable family. My parents cared about me, but there was a big secret in that I was being sexually abused. The reason I'm share that and out about it is because, and that's only recently really, is I think people need to hear that you can get better and recover. And it's a very, there's a lot of shame and stigma around that. So I've kind of gone through a bit of a journey after the last year or so, after publishing this article, about actually thinking, we need to kind of have role models of people who are able to say, look, you can experience this and you can go through a tough time and get better and recover. So I suppose the journey, thank you for some props, encouragement. The journey was, from about the age of 10, there was a lot of anger, resentment, fear, mixture of feelings there, secrets and shame. And about 13, I found that I could pain kill those with alcohol and drugs. So I got addicted to different things in that way, which temporarily took the pain away, but really the pain was still there. Ended up in a rehab, kind of therapeutic community type thing at 19. Got into AA, 5 years clean. Got into education while I was clean. But after a bit, I wasn't sure about my identity, I think, and my self-esteem. So briefly, I think I kind of got very good at education. And, I think education is a good thing. But I kind of used it as a way to try and get self-esteem. But then after about 5 years, I got, did a social psychology degree, got a first and was doing well. But I still felt that pain, 5 years clean. So I relapsed back into alcohol and drugs, amphetamine. And then I ended up, I won't dwell on the point because it's, trying to keep it brief, but I ended up in the psychiatric system. So I had 7 inpatient admissions, 7 different diagnoses in terms of a medical model, categories and diagnostic stuff, a lot of prescribed medication, antipsychotic stuff and other stuff. And after about 5 years, that wasn't all terrible as well. I got into being an environmental protester about climate change, and that was kind of interesting, living, doing that sort of thing. But I was really struggling, and then I got 16 years ago, got into recovery. This time, a combination of AA. I also found a nice bunch of people who were actually Christians in a kind of Christian church in an inner city, Bradford. I was a bit prejudiced against Christianity at the time, so I was a bit surprised. But what struck me is these two guys had got out of prison, and they were being quite genuine. One guy was sort of trying to help the other guy, and I thought, well, actually, he's quite genuine, which challenged my sort of prejudice about and so I joined a church, became a Christian, and putting that into practice, I think one of the things that helped me was forgiving people, because I was very resentful, and those resentments I used to kind of need to take alcohol and drugs to kind of change my uncomfortable feelings of resentment and guilt. Then I'd really wanted to be in a relationship and hadn't been for 10 years. And for some people, that's fine not to be in a relationship, but I wanted to be in one. So I met my wife, who I married 14 years ago, got married. I raised 2 children. So that was a big challenge, because I had 2 stepchildren and became a dad to them instead of one at a time, which is the traditional way. Yeah. Went through a series of really positive jobs where I started as a support worker, housing support worker. Well, first of all, I did voluntary work. And then I worked in a part-time in a bookshop. And I think that was good in terms of gradual progression, because I've been 5 years out unemployed and really out of society and having no self-esteem. I'd lost a lot of skills. So I had a gradual progression, becoming a housing support worker. Then I ended up managing something called personality disorder services. And then I ended up setting some of those up as well. Then I ended up being a care coordinator in a early intervention in psychosis service, which was a good job. And then I moved to the northeast of England, and I've been working in a great non-profit service now called Fulfilling Lives, where we work with people with multiple complex needs. I feel I'm giving a bit of a ramble about my jobs I've done, but it gives you a flavour of the last sort of 16 years.
Well, it's that's a lot. That's a lot. And thank you for sharing. There's a couple of things I just want to touch on that you brought up that I think are really important. You were saying about the sexual abuse that you were disclosing and that more people need to do that. That is especially true for men. I mean, it's true for women too, but, men, there needs to be much more of that out there for men, because men are even more reluctant to, I think there's more stigma for men in some ways than women. So I think that's really key. And along with that is most psychotherapists know this, but a lot of the public doesn't realize this. The fact that underneath addiction issues is always trauma. Yeah. And, that's what's underneath these. And a lot of us don't realize that, or a lot of the public doesn't realize that. And I don't think the media has done a very good job of illustrating that. Where I live in Vancouver, Canada, we have one of the worst homeless populations and most addicted populations in a centered area in the whole world. Yep. Actually, certainly in North America. And partly it's because Vancouver is a warm place in the winter. And there's a, huge community of homeless people with just, multiple traumas and multiple stories related to trauma. So I think that that's a really it's not only important for you to say that in terms of in terms of making it easier for men to disclose that, but to just really acknowledge again the trauma that is underneath people's addictions, whether they view it as trauma or not. It's there. If
I could just to respond to that is. I think it's so important. It took me a long time to realize that actually the trauma was what was underneath my addiction, and that's okay, because sometimes there's stages of recovery, and but you've really touched on the kind of area that I'm really interested in, which is actually multiple complex needs, and this idea that actually very traumatized people often end up with experiences of homelessness, also addiction and mental health problems combined, coming out of the trauma. And so one of the things I'm involved with is in England here, we've got something called psychologically informed environments is a new idea. It's a little bit like trauma-informed care. And it's the idea of helping homeless services to think more psychologically by going on a journey with the staff to help them to have reflective practice, what you call reflective practice in talking therapies. And I've piloted some of these successfully in Newcastle and Gateshead around a kind of what's called a dialogical approach, a bit like open dialogue from Western Lapland, which is kind of saying there's lots of different ideas can help you get better. But if we start to reflect, have a bit of a framework, and it starts to get at this issue, which is how do you help us have better relationships with people who are very traumatized, because we can all go on a journey. So people can get better, staff can get better, services can get better. We can all go on a journey. And I think at the heart of a lot of this, I'd agree with what you're saying. And my experience was trauma started off my habits that were difficult. Well, and reacting to it.
You said it at the beginning. You started talking about the pain and using drugs and alcohol to cover the pain, and the pain comes from somewhere, right? It didn't just appear magically out of nowhere. Yes, it's there. And so one of the things I'm curious about is you relapsed and then you have been clean and sober again 16 years now. In terms of the pain, like that's one thing, as you know, to stop the addiction. But if the pain continues like it did for you, you went back to your addiction, right? To try to alleviate the pain again. So what have you done differently in the last 16 years to heal that pain so that you aren't relapsing?
It's a good question. I think just before I answer that question, there's something there about the difference between mental health problems and addiction problems. Just wanted to mention that I found that when I got caught up in the psychiatric system for 5 years, there was a lot less role models about getting better from mental health problems, whereas there was a bit of a recovery community, very positive about addiction, and I'm keen to kind of have both kind of role models going. You know, like that you can get people can have all sorts of diagnostic stuff like I did, but it's possible to get better. And I think we could have a bit more of a community, crossover community between recovery from mental health and recovery from addiction as well. Just briefly to mention that, but you'll have to remind me about, because I didn't want to.
Well, I was asking you, like, what
have I done well?
What to heal that pain that's preventing you from relapsing?
Well, I think it's probably more than one thing. It's probably like a lot of things in life. There's lots of different factors, contributing factors, as they say. I mean, as I touched on there, I think particularly, I know it's a controversial subject in trauma recovery, but forgiveness for me, I've got to be honest, it was helpful. So that wasn't saying it was okay what was done to me, but what I was saying was it was not okay, it was wrong. But actually, I'm not going to carry on harming myself with this kind of anger and rage and resentment, and then self-harming or things I used to do, or self-harming through getting into scrapes or drinking, taking drugs. Actually, forgiving wasn't saying it was okay. It was saying it wasn't okay. But actually, I'm not going to hang on to this anger because I've got a life to get on with. That was one factor. I think actually a community, that I was part of a community who I felt cared for me. For me, that happened to be quite a genuine Christian community in a city, but it could be a different kind of community for people. I'm very much into the idea that there's many different paths to recovery. But I think when I had like a professional coming to visit me once a fortnight, it wasn't enough to give me that kind of sense of belonging, because I think our identity is relational around other people we knew. So I needed to kind of get into know people who cared about me and I could care about them. I think a couple of other quick kind of things when I reflect is I think I got into helping other people. I mean, I think because I was in a lot of pain, I was very sort of self-obsessed. That's not saying I can't still be that way, but I think when I got well, I started to think, well, I could help other people, and that got me out of myself. And then I realized I had some skills, and that helped to bind me into a community of some kind, because they could help me. Particularly at first, when I'd come out of the psychiatric system, I'd put on a lot of weight because of the antipsychotic drugs, and I did probably look a bit scary. And the people invited me around for meals, and it was they loved me really, and it was, and then that helped me to love myself. So I think being part of some community helped. I think particularly for me, meeting my wife, I hadn't had the relationship for 10 years, so that really did hurt me a lot. But I had problems with boundaries and usual kind of things when people have experienced sexual abuse, getting close and then being far away, and that kind of difficulties. So being in a relationship and getting married for me, and being responsible for my children as well. I've become a stepdad. So I think having some responsibilities helped me get well, because I thought, well, I'm responsible. I need to take care of myself because I've got responsibilities. So I don't want to talk too much, but I suppose that's some of the things that have helped.
Yeah, well, it's a combination, like you said, but it's interesting because all of them have to do with relationships and caring and feeling cared for and having positive relationships, whether it's in your Christian community or helping other people or in your relationship with your wife. Yeah,
and also at work, I've got a very supportive group of people around me at work, and I feel if I didn't, it would be a lot more difficult. Partly I take quite a lot of, I push myself quite hard, and I kind of take quite a bit of risk, like coming onto Blab, being open about my recovery is a bit scary. But if I wasn't in a kind of safe-ish working environment, and at home, and I wouldn't be able to take those risks because I'm making myself a bit vulnerable to, and I fear a bit of public criticism. But then I think, so it's that relationships of a community that I'm not saying any of those things are perfect. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect, but a good enough community of caring people allows me to think, I'll take a few risks, share a bit, because recovery is worth it. It's, compared to the kind of life when I was in and out of the psychiatric hospital, addicted to stuff. It's great to get into recovery, and it doesn't mean I don't have problems today. I struggle with stuff, and I feel a bit overwhelmed at times, but it's well worth getting well and telling people that there's different ways to get better.
It's exciting to listen to you and your journey, Ray, and your positive, warm personality comes through for sure. Do you have anything you want to add, or should we open it up for people?
Well, I think because I'm a bit of a talker, I better not add anything. I think we should open it up for other people's ideas, because I'm into this idea about opening up to open dialogue.
Yes, of course, and that's what's great about Blab.
I think opening it up would be a good idea.
So you have to open the seat since you're now hosting.
Oh, yeah, I'm the host. Yeah. So how this works, for anyone who's new, shall I just explain that?
Yes.
We could rotate people around a bit if there's more than one or two people want to come in, and you kind of click on if you want to come on and respond to anything that's been said. Don't feel pressure to come on because it's live TV, but do come on, do what you want to.
Don't feel pressure, but come on.
Come on, no. So someone's coming on. I think Jennifer's coming in, so I just need to click on accept. And hopefully Jennifer will come.
Jennifer's here. And Jennifer, you're a therapist, right?
No, I'm not actually.
There's a bit of...
Okay, you need do you have an earphone or a headphone? Otherwise the echo.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can't. No,
okay.
Sorry.
You can back in a minute, though.
Yeah. And Jennifer, maybe you could just write your question in the sidebar there. By the way, if you want to ask a question and you don't want to come in the live seat, you press / and then Q. And then what happens is it pops up like that as a question. So it's / and then the letter Q.
And you might need to do a space before you write your question, possibly.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, that's right. So / Q space and then write question.
And also just generally, because people might get interested in coming on to other blabs, it's worth getting some decent audio, which is like these don't cost a massive amount of money. These things you can plug in with a thing, but it just helps with the audio. You can try without, but a bit of decent audio helps.
Yeah, you do need something. Yeah. You do need something, a headphone or something. Otherwise, you are going to get the echo from your computer back to you. So you do need that if you're coming on a seat. It's always great to have a microphone too. But if you just have a headset or something, the ones that you use for your phone. If you have a microphone for your phone, you can use that.
Oh, they're just asking some questions. So I think it's Robin is just. I think it's / the other way.
Yes.
Q, and then a space.
And then a space, and then the question. Not a capital Q. I don't know if it works with a capital Q. Just the lowercase should work fine.
And if anybody
did. Jennifer did it. Yeah, great. You're doing it. If
anybody does want to come on, if the sound doesn't work, you could hop off again.
So we could try because it may not backfire if somebody else.
You're nearly there, Robin. You just need to / the other way, Q, and a space. So try the / the other way. And then what that means is because hosting, you're trying to listen and concentrate to what people are saying, and you're trying to look at the screen down here of the comments. So it can be helpful to see the Q. So then you know that someone's asking a question rather than a comment. The other thing is people can talk to each other and respond to each other in the comments, a bit like Twitter, whilst the discussion is going on. And then if people have resources, it's okay to save you a good website or so that you can post your resource link into the thing as well.
And if you want to, if you like what somebody's saying, you can hover over their name in the comments, and there's a star to tell them that you like what they're saying. Yeah. And there's also a little arrow that you can click on to respond. And also, right now, what you should try to do is click on the button on the other side, tell a little bird, and click on there, and you can let people know on Twitter that you're here.
So so you can tell a little bird, and then people will come in.
Jennifer, do you want to ask your question in the comments there, and Ray, or your comment, or whatever you wanted to say, and Ray can respond, or I'll respond, whatever the case may be.
Well, I'm just scrolling down the thing. So, just like to know
about me and my work. I'm no longer a practicing therapist, Jennifer. I used to practice, and I did work in the field of actually sex abuse and child abuse and family violence for 20 years. And then 16 years ago, I stopped doing that. And I am now a coach and a consultant and a copywriter for therapists and natural health businesses. My website is julietaustin.com if you want to check that out. Yeah, but I don't practice psychotherapy anymore.
And then if anybody else wanted to ask some questions in the comments, you can jump in if you want to, but I appreciate, only if you want to, but feel free if you want to come out and just ask a question or make a comment or anything, or you can comment in the comments down in the comments bar at the bottom. So someone here, James, is saying he's still trying to get a full understanding of the blab. I mean, I'm still on a steep learning curve with this, but I think it's exciting because in terms of the recovery community, whether it's trauma, addiction, or mental health, I see potential to share ideas quite quickly between people. Jennifer's asking a question. Do you distinguish between healing and recovery, and what do you feel about treatment? So I don't know, maybe is that for me or you? We could both have a go at it.
Go ahead. You answer.
Questions
there.
Yeah. So I think healing, is a good word. And I'd say I have experienced healing. And now treatment, so this is what I think. I'm into this kind of open dialogue, dialogical approach. I try to avoid jargon, but I think there's lots of different sets of ideas that can get better. So I think for some people, professional help can be really helpful, but I don't think that's the only way to get better. And there's a bit of a difficulty with professional help in that sometimes people think that's the only way to get better, and it can devalue the everyday community narratives of healing and recovery. So there might be narratives within, in indigenous populations, and all kinds of different cultures have narratives about healing, getting better over trauma. And I want to give more power to the less powerful narratives. So I think if professional help helps you, that's great. But I'd say other things can help too. So faith communities can help. Different narratives can help. A good friend could help. And I want people to feel empowered because there's so much trauma. I know it's not talked about much. There's so much trauma that we need a broad base of people able to talk about what helps you get better and not have a very small number of professionals with waiting lists that are too long. So I think healing's a good thing in lots of ways. Recovery, I think I like the phrase getting better because recovery isn't kind of, for me, it wasn't getting back to something that I once was. It's a journey of kind of new experiences, getting better, stretching myself. I'm rambling a bit now, but
well, you said it yourself in your own, when you were sharing your own story there, that, I mean, there are many things, many support systems that people need in their lives in order to heal and good positive relationships, whether you get professional help or not. I don't think any professional psychotherapist would say that that's the only solution or that itself is going to help people get better. I mean, you have to, get connected and build your relationships and get into supportive communities. I mean, that's the healing is multifaceted, right? It's not one way.
I really agree with that. I just wanted to respond to Sydney Therapist was saying, with his experience, I'll just have to scroll a bit as this goes on. I'll try to catch other people's comments. Clients in recovery, Sydney therapist, saying getting individual support and group support, professional support, all together can seem the most effective. So I think that is about kind of, and I'd expand that to just finding good, positive community engagement with people. We need those relationships. So good relationships help you get better. So I needed people to believe in me and have some, be willing to try and form a relationship with me when I didn't have a lot to offer, really. You know, I'd been unemployed for 5 years. I was quite troubled. But actually they cared about me until I cared about myself. And then I could respond and start to have helpful relationships with other people then. So I think relationship is at the key. And we need loving, caring relationships, which help us then to come round to thinking, actually, someone cares about me. I could get better. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm going to just have a little look. Robin, what's Juliet? I'm just trying to read some of the comments here. JC, any relationship works as therapy if you share narrative of your problems and the other. Yeah. Can I just respond to JC Quirrell there? Yeah. I'd really agree with that. I think sharing your narrative of your problems is so important. So for example, briefly, if you take the idea of resentment, that's a habit. So I'm kind of interested in the idea of habits, and you can have good habits to get better because it's not kind of tied up in one particular narrative. So resentment could be made sense of in different ways. So when I took my resentments and shared them with and I'm not anti-psychiatry. Well, I think it's got its limitations. I think we need therapeutic relationships. But what I'm trying to say is, if you took a habit like resentments about my abuse, when I told that to a psychiatrist, they said, "Oh, that's a symptom of a disorder." It could be a personality disorder, and so my habit had traveled into a different narrative, which was a professional medical model kind of set of ideas. But there's lots of these relatively stable sets of ideas on narratives. And when I traveled out when I eventually escaped the kind of narrative, the psychiatric set of ideas, I could see that it's possible to make sense of resentments in other narratives. And I found narratives that made more sense than saying I've got a disorder. And that helped me to kind of, so that I'm responding to JC Quirrell's point about narratives. So I think narratives is really important, listening to people's narratives and then being able to share and dialogue between narratives and say, does this narrative help you? If it doesn't, why not take your set of difficult habits and your positive skills habits as well and find a different narrative? And it's a bit like jumping from a burning, crashing plane to another one, and find the narrative that helps you get better in a community that people care about. Have
you sort of thrown your diagnoses out the window at this point, Ray?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I do try to be quite diplomatic about this. I understand for most people, often there is a narrative where they think, well, I realized I had this mental illness or diagnosis, and now I was ill and get better. That's a health narrative. I'm ill and I've got better. And that can help people. But it's got its limitations, I'd say. And so I kind of have let go of all those sort of 7 different psychiatric diagnoses because I just think 7. I thought, first of all, I thought, oh, these people know what they're talking about. They're professionals. And then after about 3 and 4, and I thought, hang on a minute. This isn't right. And then I thought, after 7, I said, you know what, there must be a different narrative out there somewhere to make sense of this, because I can't have 7 different things, because you meet the diagnostic threshold for lots of different things. And the reality is, we often do meet the diagnostic threshold for things, but is it helpful to categorize people? Because as I was on I've started hosting this kind of what helps recovery from trauma blab. I'm going to do one tomorrow night at 8:00 UK time. We're now early in this started, and in there, someone came on the other day, and they were saying the psychiatric system was a bit like trying to fit everyone in with a cookie cutter into the same thing, but we're all individuals. So I think I'd say we've all got individual narratives, and our narratives interweave, and we could share those helpful narratives and listen to each other in a dialogue would help you get those healing narratives better. And interweaving narratives is better than saying a categorical approach, saying that they're just social constructs of diagnosis.
Right. And, I think there are many people like you that have kind of risen above any mental health diagnosis that they might have gotten. And for some people, sometimes being treated by medication can be helpful, at least in the short term. It depends on how bad it is. But I think that you're right that, many people are given diagnoses that can be overcome and healed.
Definitely. And to be honest, I'm very diplomatic and open-minded about this. So medication helps some people some of the times. But what I'd say is get some good advice about the pros and cons. Woo! My two basset hounds are causing me some trouble here. Because I think generally psychiatry it's an overvalued idea that they have. Psychiatry overvalues medication and they play down the side effects and they exaggerate the effects. Instead, what would have been helpful to say when I was on medication is to say, look, this might take the edge off things a bit, but it might put some weight on, it might give you diabetes. And actually, it's not going to get your girlfriend, Ray. You still have to struggle with life.
And it's not going to necessarily heal your pain that's underneath.
Yeah. Well, it was more of a dampening down, and I needed to kind of actually get in touch with stuff and feel. But then, for some people, medication helps. So I think just decide for yourself, get some good advice, and weigh up the pros and cons. There's the Roger Whittaker books, really good about the big pharma and the kind of medicalization of stuff. So I just say get some good advice and weigh it up. And decide for yourself and try and get some, there are some good psychiatrists that will give you the pros and cons, but life's difficult anyway. So it's easy to overvalue when I was on a lot of medication, a lot of antipsychotic stuff, I used to think, the answer's just a little bit more or less of this, instead of thinking maybe I should do some voluntary work. And meet people and, because it kind of closes down the thinking. That's what my experience was. The diagnostic stuff closed down my thinking instead of opening it up to thinking there's loads of stuff out there that probably would help you. I wanted to respond to some of the comments. The DSM, which is for those that don't know, it's the psychiatric kind of Bible of hard to find a sense of identity without a diagnosis, maybe. Well, I think I really struggled with my identity. So when I got a diagnosis, I kind of clung to it. And it kind of, partly, it didn't help me because I used to say, well, actually, I'm drinking and taking drugs because I've got, bipolar affective disorder, or I've got, personality disorder, or whatever the latest thing was. But I wasn't conning people. I kind of believed it myself. I was thinking, I've got all these problems. Wouldn't you drink as well? But actually, now I've kind of realized that we're all individuals, and there's journeys to be had. There's tools that can help, and if we just share ideas, that would be good. There's he's talking about Gabor Mate there, and
he's in Vancouver. He lives here.
I've seen.
I've met him and I've seen him speak, and yes, he's wonderful.
Is he the chap on YouTube? And he talks about he works with the homeless. Is that the guy?
He used to work with the homeless in Vancouver. He doesn't do that anymore, but he did for many years. And he has been an outspoken person on the whole thing around trauma, around addiction. One of his books, which was amazing, In the Realm of Holy Ghosts, strongly recommend that book. It was one of the best books I've ever read on trauma or addiction, because it covers all these topics. It covers the science and the neuroscience behind addiction and trauma. And it looks at social political issues. He talks about his own addiction to classical music. And, really couldn't drive by the classical music store without buying it. And, so it's a really, really good book if anybody hasn't read it. He's got other books out there, but that's a really good book.
I think I've seen it. I've seen it on videos anyway, and he physically, I thought he looks like he's worked for a long time with the homeless, because that's the area I work in. On his face, he kind of looked like he
that's not true. He worked with the upper middle class neighborhood as a regular physician for many, many, many years, probably 20, I think. And from there, he went to work with the homeless in downtown Vancouver. And maybe he did that, I don't know, I'm thinking 7 to 10 years. And now he's doing public speaking on a variety of different topics.
And I think it's so important to be able to open up this dialogue around trauma, reactions to trauma, such as addiction and mental health. And because, I was just amazed that I talked to the psychiatrist right at the beginning about my experience of abuse, and still they ended up just kind of simplifying it and into these diagnoses. And I thought, well, actually, that's not really engaging with the narrative of my life and what I'm telling you. It may be easier to categorize people. Briefly, it made me, when I was kind of getting these different diagnoses, I don't know if you've heard of a singer called Skunker Nancy, a black woman. And she said, you might not know her, but she sang a song, a great song, about, it was about race. So it says, you tried to intellectualize my blackness to make it easier for your whiteness. Mm-hmm. And I really like that song. I know I'm a white bloke, but I learned more from her than what the psychiatrist was saying, because I thought, actually, if you relate that to mental health, were they trying to intellectualize my distress to make it easier for their kind of relationship with me as a professional? Oh, someone's coming in. And so does that make sense in terms of actually to be real in a relationship with people? You kind of, people are coming in. Ben Tate, and I'm
Ben's coming in.
So we're going to see. Hi.
Hey, Hi. Ben.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
Can you put your screen down a little bit so we can see you better? We're seeing the ceiling of your room.
So we're just wondering whether your audio's okay. Could you say something to see whether, because you kind of need reasonably good audio to be able to share something, Ben?
I'm kind of new to this, so like.
Okay.
You're doing fine. You're doing just fine.
And we can hear you fine. Would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah, I would like to say that you're doing a great job, and that basically I've been watching you guys stream.
Thanks, Ben.
And yeah, you've done a good job.
I really appreciate your feedback.
And I'm all the way from England, so
that's great.
If you want to take a peek outside, I will show you.
I don't know, but well, I was just going to let people know. If people want to follow each other, the community that have come together to have a chat, you can click on and follow people on their name, and you can follow them on Blab, and then you can find them at other times. Yeah. So you found this interesting bed.
Yeah, good. It's actually nice.
And one of the thoughts I was having was it allows people to hear ideas that wouldn't normally come together and hear ideas. And then it can provoke kind of discussion and thoughts.
I was thinking about making a music video, but I don't know.
You were thinking about making we've just lost Ben for a second.
Okay. I think there was a JC Quirrell over there had some questions there, Ray.
Yeah, I'm going to look at JC if you bear with me. All right. If you don't feel being judged by others, and keep safe in the privacy of psychoanalysis, give you the impression that you are in a comfort zone. That area that trauma destroys is very difficult to feel confidence with others. Could be confident to talk with others. The first step to recover. So I'm just trying to read that and respond.
Well, he's talking about for sure feeling. You want to? Do you want to clarify that a bit? But it sounds like you're talking about confidence and lack of confidence, fear of being judged, and that maybe talking with others is the first step to recovery. And for some people, I think that is disclosing their pain, and just because that's the first step of connecting with someone else around your pain, which can really help people heal. So that, in that sense, yes, I think that's true.
Yeah, definitely. And if I could respond to that. I think that's massive, because in terms of my journey, what I'd say is I needed eventually to find someone where I felt it was safe to trust. So trust is a massive issue in the journey of recovery, to find some people who I felt were okay enough, not perfect, but good enough, trustable to share, and would keep a confidence about things and would have a reasonable response to my sharing of my pain. A bit like the comment about not intellectualizing distress too much, but actually could be with me and say, look, this is really difficult, but there's a way to get better. So trust was very difficult because I was very wary about people. And then you need to get into a place where you generally feel you can build trust slowly. So I think that's really important in that journey. So we can be people people can have trust and confidence in as well. I think not that we're perfect, but that we can kind of acknowledge a bit of validation is very important. I found if you haven't been validated much, when people have experienced trauma, just saying, look, I can appreciate you feel very angry, very distressed or worried, and just appreciating and validating people's feelings, it can be tremendously therapeutic. And therapeutic just means something that helps you get better. Mm-hmm. So it's just responding to some of the questions there. Right. So Jennifer's also posted a link to we mentioned Gabba Mate, and thank you, Jennifer. This is new experience for a lot of us. Yeah. So I appreciate everyone. Ben's trying to come back in again, so I'm going to let Ben back in again. Because we'll see if he comes back in.
One thing is with people these days, they're just like basically shy, like talking to new people. And,
shyness. Yeah. That's very true. And in a way, new social media like Blab can help with shyness because people don't actually have to come on and be brave and here they can do, but you can actually listen to what instead of comment.
My hands are full with nerves right now,
And Ben, I felt that way as well when I first went on a Blab, because I thought, I felt all sorts of worry about would people judge me, and what would they think? Would I say, would I say?
Just don't get worried about it because it's like basically a live stream where you just hang out with your friends.
Yeah,
and everything, where you make brand new friends.
It is, and I think you've got to also maybe explore a bit and find out what you're interested in, who you feel comfortable with. I popped onto a Blab earlier, and I just didn't really like what people were talking about, and I thought, well, it's not really my cup of tea, and I just popped out again. So you've got it's very democratic. You can vote with your feet. If you don't like a Blab, leave it, and if you do, come back and.
I mean, you've got some random Blabs where people talk about like random things what you don't really know about, and like. It's really weird.
It is, and what I've discovered. I mean, I'm on a learning curve as we all are, Ben, with Blab, but. Like I did a test, and this really great guy popped in called Steve, and then he'd experienced mental health problems himself in America, and then we just got chatting because it was a test. That was the title of it, and then he came on to the kind of discussion we do about recovery from trauma the next day, and it was like meeting someone and it was a bit random. So this exciting thing about it could bring people together, Blab, who wouldn't normally come together to exchange ideas.
Yeah.
So do you think it might help you with your shyness, Ben?
Probably, as soon as I get used to it, and then.
Yeah. And I think what's helpful is to do a little bit and reflect, and then think, well, what was that like? Did I feel comfortable, or shall I just stay in the comments next time? Or you could just take it at your own pace.
Yeah. I mean, I do a YouTube channel thing, so basically I'm not shy about that, but basically shy about when it comes to real life face.
Live is different. And a lot of people, even when they're not necessarily shy, are camera shy. They may not be shy around people, but they're shy to come on and be on camera because it's not something they're used to. They're used to doing. I'm actually doing a Blab on that on Thursday, on overcoming camera shyness. I'll actually put it in the link here.
If you stick the link in.
The very first time that you used Blab, how shy were you guys?
Well, what I'd say is it was more less shyness and more. I had a big knot of anxiety and in my stomach, so I don't know whether you call it shyness. It was fear. So I was frightened about. Using it, but then I was a bit conflicted because I thought it could be helpful to people, and and maybe I should overcome and be brave, my fear, to try and do the thing I'm interested in, which is bringing a recovery community together. But I felt very fearful, I suppose, for some reason. But then it didn't mean I couldn't be brave and do it anyway. Like, it was just a feeling.
Yeah.
And practice is what makes us comfortable with things, right? The more we do it. Ray, I'm just wondering if we should wrap up here.
I think it would be good, yeah. So I wanted to thank everybody, thank Juliet for asking to interview me. So I appreciate that experience. It's been okay. It's been good, interesting. And thank everyone that's commented. And I think what will happen, I'm trying to remember, I should be able to post, if you're interested, I post the tweet, you can see it on replay if you're interested at all. So
you just come to the same link that you see above, and you can watch the replay later. Actually, if you've subscribed, depending on your settings, you should get an email with the replay.
Right. And remember, you can follow anybody that's come on, but on the replay you can as well. Follow people. And just to say, tomorrow night, an hour earlier, 8 o'clock UK, that's like 3 p.m. in New York, etc. I'm going to do...
Yeah.
No, I'm in the northeast of England. But I'm saying I'm going to host a blab tomorrow night.
Whereabouts in the
northeast? It's a little village up near Addick in the northeast. So what I was going to say, Ben, is really? Tomorrow night
I live.
Go on, Ben.
I live near
I work in Newcastle. It's a bit of a drive up the coast, but I work there, and it's a great place. So what I'm saying, I'm just letting people know. Tomorrow, I'm going to wind it down. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock in the UK. If you want to interested in tune in. And
would you put the link? What are you doing at 8 o'clock?
So
what are you doing?
It's called recovery. It's called What Helps Recovery from Trauma, Addiction,
a blab?
Mental health. It's a blab.
Okay.
Exactly.
Do you have the link that you can put in there right there?
I wasn't clever enough to copy the link earlier.
I can go find it.
If you could. So basically, if you search for...
I'll find it. I just got to go to your profile. It's called What Helps Recovery, right?
What Helps...
I got it.
Yeah,
I got it already.
Wonders of Modern Technology. So that's tomorrow night at 8 p.m, I think. And
I think I got it right here. So let me just see if I can get it in the window. Hopefully I copied it right there. Oh no, that's not it. Hold on a second. I had it. Yeah, go. So What Helps Recovery? What are you gonna be doing there, Ray?
So what we do, I share about these briefly about these 8 great habits that I've thought about, whatever reflected on my own recovery, but just as a way to start off the dialogue and then try to bring people in to talk about recovery and what helps recovery, really, whether that's from addiction, trauma, or mental health. And if there's a link there, and I'm going to do it at the same time for the next 3 or 4 weeks, just to try and build a community.
So that's 8 p.m. UK time.
Yep. So that's noon Pacific or 3 p.m. Eastern. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to thank everyone for coming. I'm going to wind up the thing now. I wanted to thank, really thank you, everyone. Everybody.
Yeah, thanks for all your participation,
the comments,
all you and your questions and your comments. And thank you all. And thanks for trying to come on, Jennifer. Sorry that didn't work out. And hopefully we'll meet you on other blabs.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody.
And we just got Jody's just joined. That's just Jody there. Okay. Well, thanks, Ray. And thanks for your patience for those of you that hung in there with our technical problems.
We got going.
And we'll connect with you later, Ray. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody else.
Ben.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So now I need to work out how to end.
If you just click.
I will. Okay.